About to turn 33, got a portfolio that's currently cash flowing 7 figures, have raised 4.5 million in investor funding. Portfolio is also at the 10 million pound mark.
10 going to 30 now.
When it comes to closing investors, what tips would you have for them?
The key is,
What do bigger deals look like for you?
my biggest deal now is a block of apartments.
Welcome back to another episode of the PBK podcast. Myself, Kaz, is your host, and today I'm joined by Cheung. How you doing? You okay?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me on the show.
Listen, we had to get you on. You were a personal recommendation from the man himself, Mr. Alfred Jade.
Yes,
He said, you're going to have to get this guy on. And I said, oh, why? He said, listen, he's been doing some good stuff. And I saw your bio. And I said, about to turn 33. Got a portfolio that's currently cash flowing almost 7 figures, I believe. Very, very close to that. Have raised 4.5 million in investor funding.
Probably a little bit more now.
A little bit more now.
The last time I spoke to you.
So he's working.
Yeah.
Portfolio is also at the 10 million pound mark.
Closer to probably about 10 going to 30 now by the end of all the projects for the end of the year.
Nice. And I think you said you've paid back how much in interest over the term?
If I'm honest, it's probably close to about $1 million now, I'd say.
Close to $1 million.
Getting there.
Deal wise, sort of 30 odd deals.
We've done about 30 deals today. Some of them are like title splits as well.
Yeah. Okay. So they multiply, which is always good.
The idea is to get to 1,000 units. We're taking HMO units by maybe next year or the year after.
Okay. So big goals. But you yourself actually only started in property in 2018.
Yeah. Well, end of 2018. Pretty much the busiest period is like COVID time, when everyone was like sat at home watching their TV screens, and then I was just literally on site and panicking about what's going to happen next few months.
So we're going to get there, but let's take it back to your background. Where did you start? Because I know I saw when I read your bio, you said sort of quintessentially started in your parents' takeaway business.
Yeah. So in short, I've never really talked about it in the past, where every Chinese kid that kind of grows up in the UK, they would always work with their parents, paid below minimum wage as usual. But that gave me the foundation, and then like obviously I saw my parents how they ran their businesses, and probably not the best way, but you take the best bits and like multiply from it. And then I went into like an accountancy role where I shadowed like a really good mentor, and I dealt with a lot of tax cases and stuff.
Was it university route, or did you go?
So I did uni, and then it was literally straight into a placement, and then straight after placement go straight back into a job, because there was still cases I was working on. It was like, you got to come back, you can't leave us. So I was quite fortunate to actually be in that role. I think that was about 6-7 years that I was in there for, until I set up by myself. But like I said, it's always kind of the family foundation as well as like the practical practice experience, and just combine the two together.
I get that. But in terms of transitioning into property from being, the professional in the accounting space, what made you want to make that leap?
You know what? I dealt with a lot of clients that were in property already. And then I remember I meeting him later, actually.
Okay.
He actually introduced me to the idea of leverage. He said, I got to read this book, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad. Not Poor Dad. It is Rich Dad Poor Dad. And as soon as I've still got that sheet where it's like, if you've got like 200 grand, why would you just buy one house and then just settle that? Why not leverage it and then buy 4 houses and then refinance, add value? These are the key words that he said. And then I just kind of went from there. And then I think the social media algorithms got to me, and I was like, go on this like 1-day course, and then 1 day turned to 3 days, and then you literally sign your life away to like these courses. But I actually did something with it, and it connected me with loads of people that were in the space a lot further on, and some maybe just beginning. So we kind of like excelled as we went on.
So when you touched on earlier on in terms of leveraging, but obviously coming from like your parents' background, what were their attitudes towards the level of maybe risk or debt you were taking on board?
Funny enough, I don't think they actually understood what I was doing. But you know what? They were like, you've sort of moved out. I was with my girlfriend at the time. So they're like, you do you. And I remember telling my mom when I sat down on the sofa, I was like, I spent like 25 grand on this course. And I was expecting her to give me a reaction. maybe it was my kind of like sense of I'm trying to get some validation that it was
Hmm.
the right choice. But she's just like, you know what you're doing, just go
Hmm.
ahead with it. And that's probably the best moral support I had
I
at the
think
time.
parents' responses are always fine. Up until now, like my mum just retired, like she's gonna be 70 soon,
Oh,
and in
nice.
her retirement speech, bearing in mind I've been doing what I've been doing for over a decade, she says, "Yeah, my son Kaz, I don't really know what he does, but he seems to be doing
He's all
okay."
right.
And he's friends with Stormzy. That was her conclusion of what I do with my entire life.
Yeah.
So that was as yes, I think a lot of the time they're not really that aware of what you're doing, but they're very much more in just that as long as they can see that you're not struggling, they're okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's always the element of contribution, like
Mm,
trying to give back.
mhm,
One of my goals was really to being able to take them away as well.
mhm,
And we went on a couple holidays together, been out to Hong Kong, which is where they're from as well,
mhm.
to kind of surprise them and say, look,
Yeah,
hey, here's your grandkids.
no.
And I think that's the freedom it's allowed me to
Mhm,
have, as well as building great teams around me to keep things kind of sustainable
mhm.
whilst I'm away.
And then you touched on the amount that you paid for the education
Yeah.
in terms of 25,000. Hindsight wise, do you think that was a good move? Like, how do you sort of view that in terms of looking back on it?
I think it was a brilliant
Mm,
move. That was the start. I've
mhm,
probably spent about 120 grand today,
mhm,
and that includes like your networking, you're going out, like your hotels and travel
mhm,
retreats and stuff like that. But it's multiplied. Not even I can't even say like tenfold.
mhm,
Probably multiple folds
mhm,
because it's not the actual physical cash; it's the connections it's provided me,
mhm.
and I could literally like ring someone up and say, "Look, I've got this great deal," and then like, "Have you got that money ready that we talked about like 6 months ago?" And
Mhm.
then like, bam, cash in the bank, and I wouldn't be able to do that without like making those connections in the first place.
Okay. Nice, interesting. So when you said you've gone on the courses, you've said 2018 is when you bought your first property. Talk me through your first deal.
First deal was
Mm,
just like a 3 bed. It was a 2 bed house, which is
mm,
what, I could do the rent to rent model,
mhm,
turn it into like a quick 3 bed HMO and just rent it out. But
mhm,
then at the time, Derby was quite low in prices, so I bought the house for like I think at the time it was like 120 grand.
mhm,
Arguably, I could have said I overpaid for it. And it was literally done within a month. And I bought another one, which was already like an existing 3 bed HMO, kind of side by side. And day one, those two were like cash flowing around £600 each.
mhm,
And that was just my accounting brain say I need some income whilst the other ones are going through
mhm,
because it's not like a next day you get paid.
mhm.
Before you could probably do a 6 bed HMO in like 3-4 months and then do the refinance within 6 or 7 months. But at the time, my thinking was let's get two cash flowing, kind of like your rent to rent model, and then the other two 6 beds, which will be in heavy refurb, they'll be out of action for like at least let's say 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
And then from then it kind of just spiraled and multiplied from there.
I guess for a lot of people that are thinking about it, whether or not they're coming from, having maybe a small business or working like in property in a small function or from a more corporate 9 to 5, the idea of going from buying your first place at 120,000 to talking about building a portfolio worth in excess of 10 million within that period of time. Like I'm trying to understand, like, what does that roadmap look like for you?
I think for me, I wouldn't have been able to do it without the investor support.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just kind of building those building blocks
Mm-hmm.
because you have to get the lenders comfortable with you using development finance
Mm-hmm.
because you won't be able to get it straight off the bat unless you probably use someone as an experienced director on your
Mm-hmm.
company. So I had to go through that phase of like growing with the smaller projects and then not disregarding the smaller projects because I'm still doing like the 6 beds, but just more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And without the investor support, I don't think I would have been able to do it. And also the banks with the development finance.
So when we look at like raising investor finance versus skill set to be able to find a deal
Right.
and having that skill, which one do you think comes first? 'Cause I think a lot of the time it's very chicken and egg with the two.
I've always obviously now I'd find a deal first
Mm-hmm.
because I know the finances there, and even if it's not in the bank, and I'm telling the agents like, oh yeah, I've got the money ready to go,
Mm-hmm.
it's always pushed me to like find the finance, whether it's like the last day of the last week of the auction deadline or even like
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks before it. So definitely finding a deal first, I feel as though is important
Mm-hmm.
because you could be sitting around talking about the theory of it, and analysis paralysis kind of stops you from getting a deal to utilize that investor. And by then, the investor probably gets disinterested and probably
Yeah.
would have done something else with their cash.
I think that is for a lot of people is where they get stuck, especially early on. It's like, if you've got investors to have that level of confidence in you, great, you've got the investor now, you don't have the deal, versus, okay, I've got an amazing deal, but don't have the funds. And so you sort of targeted finding a deal with the confidence that based from your experience, your networking, that you'd be able to raise the funds, you know.
And that I can only speak that from
Mm,
myself, my own
mhm,
personal experience, but that's how I feel has helped me kind of propel, um, and just keep
mm,
engaged with like the agents, because if I'm just like sitting around waiting for this magical investor for like
mm.
6 months, a lot can happen in those 6 months.
Yeah.
I'll lose out on deals, and I've had it in the past where I've looked at a deal, I was like, oh, maybe it's a bit too much for me now, and then like I look back now like could have done it,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no,
that's
definitely.
the benefit of hindsight, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think it's also like low hanging fruit. Like with the bigger the deals are, the less people there are at that level of
Yeah.
income to go and do it. And in the smaller deals, there's more competition, the margins get eroded away. So sometimes, obviously, risk permitting, it does make more sense to go that little bit bigger
Mm.
just because the margins can be that bit more fruitful.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely.
But I guess when it comes to closing investors, like you now have obviously built a system in place where you're able to do that. But if I was to say, look, Sean, can you give people that are trying to close their investors or how to meet investors and how to get, that investment over the line? What tips would you have for them?
I think it's painting the avatar. Like,
Mm,
what does your investor look like? A lot of people think they're fairies or like magical beings,
mm,
but it could literally be your neighbor from across the road
mm-hmm,
who he maybe retired already. He's got like a nice pension pot. I think the key is just to keep engaging with lots of people and telling them what you're doing. Even if you're going out to do a viewing, if you're
mm-hmm,
first starting out, or maybe just saying like, "Look, I'm investing in myself." A lot of people might kind of say, like, "Oh, you're putting so much money in this course, is it going to work?" But at the end of the day, you're investing in yourself,
mm-hmm,
and it's getting those people to understand what is that going to enable you to do.
mm-hmm.
If you're going to expand on yourself, you're going to expand your network, and from then on, you're going to find a deal. It's going to come up if you put the work into it,
Mm,
and then people will watch. People certainly watch me for like good 2 3 years, and then they reached out and said, "Hey, I've been watching you for like 2 3 years," and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I've got like 100 grand, 200 grand,"
mm-hmm,
um, and then it's just unlocking that conversation and say, "Look, I can put this to use. This is what I've done before." And if it's not something I've done before, I can say, "Oh, this is what so and so's done,"
mm-hmm,
and it's getting them to understand model.
mm-hmm.
So there's always a way, but I think the structure is just keep telling people what you're doing, and as long as it makes sense to them, they don't need to know all the details.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think sometimes people want to turn investors almost into business partners
Yeah.
when the reality is they need to believe in your ability to go out there and deliver, as opposed to understanding all the intricacies of the difference between a mini HMO versus Sue Generous versus whatever else you may be doing.
Yeah.
They just need to understand or believe that you have the ability to protect their money, to get them a good return and make sure that the project is it's fruitful.
Yeah, and I think, like I said earlier, it's a tonality. If
Mm,
you're confident in what you're saying, obviously, the first few times, I wasn't probably nailing those conversations. I probably
mhm,
scared a few people away because they looked desperate.
mhm,
But it's better to get that out of the way earlier on, maybe on like a few friends in your phone book that you
mhm,
think that don't have the money, but all of a sudden
mm,
they're like, oh no, I might have just had some inheritance from so
mhm,
and so, and then you wouldn't think you can't think of everyone's scenarios, but the
mhm.
best way you can do is just to get reach out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I remember when I spoke to you early on. It's just always just good to speak to people that have been there and done it. And I spoke to a lady called Susanna Cole,
Yeah.
and she was talking about having like a traffic light system for like investors when she was starting out. In that
Mm.
she wouldn't start with the green leads because you're not really homed on your processes well
Yeah.
enough. You start early on with the ones that you think are sort of probably a bit of time wasters. So you put them in the red category, but you just have a chat to get that confidence yourself, and then go to the amber ones that are maybe. And then when you've really worked that process out, it's a lot, you're a way better negotiator, a way better salesperson, or just an explainer of the potential proposal that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like you said,
Mm,
salesperson, it's selling yourself.
mm,
It's not the deal. People
mm.
don't really care about the deal.
Yeah.
If they're a serious investor, they're probably either running a business
Mm,
themselves, and they don't have the time to know all the, like you said earlier,
mm,
like you don't have the time to like know everything
yeah.
about like myself as a guest, but like it's just making those quick decisions, and that's where the money's made, I think.
But that's like I feel that, and that makes a lot of sense in terms of how you were able to do it. But then just confidence of being able to actually having that level of exposure, I guess, in terms of investor finance, principal lender, potentially development facilities as well. How did you put systems in place to be able to manage all of that?
You know what? I still do a lot of
Mm,
the like the brokers paperwork and like managing when the drawdowns are coming in and
mhm,
stuff like that. I do have other JV partnerships that
mhm.
I work with, and 9 times out of 10, I'm the person doing all the broker stuff
Yeah.
because that's what I'm good at, or raising the capital. And then the other JV partner, they'll do all the building side. They'll be on
Mhm.
sites because that's something that I don't like doing,
Yeah.
or don't even have a clue what's going on site. So it's nice to kind of work in partnership with many people because they will always have a skill set that's better
Mhm,
than me, and then I can focus on monetizing tasks, and
mhm.
that's how I think growth should be. Really, if I dwell on trying to be everyone wear everyone's hats, then I'm just going to stagnate, and then a lot of deals will probably fly through, and I'll lose time I will never get back.
This has been a frequent theme to podcasts we've recorded recently. Everyone's been speaking about wearing a lot of hats
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
trying to avoid it as well, trying to just focus on specialization.
Mm.
How important do you think your accountancy background's been to your success in the industry?
I think numbers is everything, if I'm honest.
Hmm.
When you go to these courses, they tell you how to work out the numbers,
Hmm.
and it's like it's great because I understood logistics of like working backwards, start
Hmm.
with the end in mind, and then
Hmm.
work backwards from the GDV. Because then that gives me the certainty that I'm going to have enough money to pay X amount back to an investor, pay off the deal. If I don't have enough money, then I'm like, right, I can find a plan B strategy and maybe find another deal that swallows this other one. But no, the accountancy has definitely come great because not only that I've been an expert in my area with the HMOs, I've managed to help other investors that
Hmm.
are getting into property, already been in property, and doing their accounts as well. So
Hmm.
then we've got a great team behind us that looks after that side, and it keeps you in the loop and keeps you accountable because everyone secretly watches each other, and then you're like,
Hmm.
right, I know he's doing this, so like he gives me the confidence that we're in the safe hands, and it means I've got to make sure that all my numbers stack. Basically,
Yeah.
I can't flip. If I don't make money, I don't make money. I need to tell people that, and I
Yeah,
think
of
that's the
course.
transparency behind it.
That makes a lot of sense. You specialized, or initially you specialized in HMOs. And has that been, I know you said you've done some title splitting as well, but
Yeah, yeah.
where's your focus been over those 30 deals? Have they been almost entirely HMOs or what have they
All
looked
of them
like?
are HMOs. I've got a couple flats as
Mm,
well. But even some of the flats, we've managed to split them off as like 3 bed, 4 bed
mm,
HMOs.
mm-hmm,
So, and purely because of cash flow, not to just obviously get more cash in a month, but it's also to cover the costs.
mm-hmm,
Since like COVID, bills have gone up and mortgages have gone up as well. So, the more you can maximize out of a deal, the better it's going to stack. And then I'm not always turning off these deals that many people say, "Oh, it's not going to work because it doesn't work this way." But then you've got to look at it another angle
mm-hmm.
and not just force appreciation with cash flow, but force it through capital appreciation as well by doing title splitting and commercial valuations as well, which
Mm-hmm.
has been key over the journey.
Would you say you have like quite a high risk tolerance?
I think I've got a really high risk tolerance. I remember sitting with these like there's like pension advisors
Yeah.
and they give you that questionnaire like, oh, so where do you sit? It's like 10, 10, 10. And you know what? The background is I used to gamble.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know this, but
Oh,
like back in the day when I used to chill with my mates,
mm,
it's like a takeaway thing. Like you close on a Monday, and then what
mm,
do you do, the lads? You go to the casino and
mm,
like
mm,
you kind of like spin, not just red or black on
mm.
roulette. It would be like numbers, and then
Yeah.
I remember like hitting a £25 pony on one number. I was like,
Mm.
right, £25 on zero, and they came through, and like the whole room just went crazy. And then like
Yeah.
I feel as though that's had an element of how I
Mm,
manage my risk.
mm-hmm,
Not to say like I'll just gamble with like money, but like it's calculated risk at all
mm-hmm,
times, and it still gives me a good buzz. Just like thinking that I'm doing the right thing with cash and making more money with money, and I think that's what drives me.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, I was saying the other day, we had this valuation come through on one of the deals, and it's a very long process. You kind of get a bit underwhelmed with the whole process
mm-hmm.
because you buy it, the bill's
Yeah.
going through, it gets delayed, builder says something wrong, extras come up. And he kind of, right, I just want to get this deal over with and done with. And then as soon as like that valuation landed, it was like 1.2 million. And to be fair, I didn't even believe I'll get 1.2 million. I said 1.3, and I thought, whatever comes, whatever comes.
Yeah.
And then when it came in, I was just on the cross trade at home, and then I just celebrated. I was like, "This is mad!" Like I didn't expect like this kind of outcome, and then it's
Yeah.
going to pay X amount back, and then you get that confidence again. Like, all right, okay, I'm going to get like 300 grand in the next like month or so. And,
I think that is a common common thing that people have in property is that because a lot of the refurbs take a long time, the refinance takes a long time, you almost get lost in the admin or the building work where it's just like, looking a state for a long period of time. And I think you have to be able to celebrate those wins, whether it be just the day the tenants move in and you see maybe a video from someone who does some
Yeah.
social media and it looks really nice. And you're like, oh, this one's good. Or you see the refinance number.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, particularly if you are shooting for the stars, to make sure that you do really enjoy the wins as you go. We just feel like you're constantly on that treadmill just spinning.
Yeah, no, I like that analogy.
Yeah. What's this? This is a question for you now, off topic, but so when you went to Hong Kong, did you manage to go to Macau quickly? Just
No, I
you
didn't.
didn't.
No, I was because when we travel now, it's always with like my young family. So I've
Okay.
got a 1.5 and a 2.5. So maybe I like a lad's holiday,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's because I've been so driven with what I'm doing. It doesn't interest me as
Yeah.
it did before. Because before you could say it was like there was a purposeless life where you just knew what you knew at the time. These are the friends you were with, and to be fair, I'm still friends with a lot of them, and they've got families as well. But it's just a stage of your life you've got to acknowledge and be like, right, that was me once upon a time,
Yeah.
and what did I learn from it? So,
Exactly. Well, you learned about your risk tolerance, because the reason I touched on risk is because typically in the HMO space, when you're going for commercial valuations, is there obviously, and you get this uplift,
yeah,
but there's not necessarily like a resale exit market based on that level of uplift. So where the gap between your kind of bricks and mortar valuation and maybe sort of like fire sale valuation versus
yeah,
your actual level of your debt on the property, which is why I asked about your attitude towards risk. But I guess you've covered that by having amazing cash flow. That means there's no real rationale to dispose of the assets.
I think to flip on that, I was taught from the early courses, even if interest rates went up, as long as it washes its face, your cash flow might be no longer £1,000, it's £300. It's still washing its face, and then I'm going to hold on. I've got a 30-year mortgage on this, so like it's not like I'm going to sell and exit and give up the next year. It will get better, and slowly rents will inflate as we go on, and it might not be the all-time highs of like £1,000 for a 6-bed. It might just be that 500, but it just motivates me to just say, I'm just going to do a few more 6-beds or do a 12-bed, 24, and then like that number I can control as long as it washes its face and the rooms are getting filled, and I'm not having to force it to be fully filled to be breaking even. Then that's how I qualify a deal.
And I think that is the good sides with business and growth and economies of scale, that you mitigate your risk by volume, by having, a large number that you can look at it. We know we're not looking to sell, so we're not worried about the exit value. And as long as we're adding to our positive cash flow, it's still, it means if one's not performing as well across the entire portfolio, we're still quite safe.
Yeah, it's a fair point. And you hear it a lot about commercial valuations. What if the market downturns by like 20%? I've taken a 75% mortgage. It's still that 5% buffer, and then over time that 5% would inflate to about 10%. So it's not something that I dwell on too much because I'm just focused on the next deal. And whereas I know what you mean, a lot of people go, "Oh no, I don't want a commercial valuation." So why would you not? Unless
no, I think it makes sense. I think it's just important. I always say this to people, that just you have to work out what works for you, because if you're going to be having sleepless nights over your level of debt, then that, whether it's £1,000 or £300, might not be worth it to you because of the impact it has on your own personal well-being.
And that feeds back into what's your attitude to level of risk.
Exactly.
And, if you've got that sorted, then the sky's your limit, isn't it? So.
Exactly that. And talking of sky's your limit, obviously you've set some very big goals. You said you wanted to build a portfolio to what amount?
If I'm honest,
Mm.
I put in my goals every
Mm.
every day that I want my net worth to be 1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build by like 20 years time, and then
Mm-hmm.
it rewinds to like 100 million in like 10 years time, and
Mm-hmm.
then 10 million and so forth. And it's just a number. I think as long as I keep doing what I'm doing and take on bigger deals as well as the small deals,
Mm-hmm.
I'll get there eventually. So I'm not too fixated on a number,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and I know for sure I need to raise more capital.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my target really. Even if I'm not waiting on a deal, I'm still raising capital
Mm-hmm.
because I know I'll find a deal. If I like, it's that chicken and egg again. You said, "Oh, do you find a deal first? Do you
Mm-hmm.
find it?" I was like, I try and do both now
Try
because
and do both.
by the time I found a deal, I know I've got something ready. I'm not trying to like be desperate on that last 2 weeks of auction deadline,
Yeah.
trying to find the cash. So
I think that like sort of running two horses is something that's become a very popular idea across, whether it's business or just attitudes, because if you get wholly fixated on just one element of the business, then something else, you're always going to find that you're chasing your tail on the other side.
mm,
And I think for those that are looking to grow, particularly at volume, then you do have to be, you can't be doing one then the other. You've got to do them simultaneously and hope they
yeah.
sort of collide at some sort of sweet spot somewhere near the middle.
Yeah, and I think to add on to
Mm,
that, a lot of people, listeners might say, well, I've still got my other day-to-day stuff to
mm,
do. And because I run my own businesses, I find people to work in certain areas which would take up a lot more time.
mm,
So if you can delegate your time to, like you've got your assistant as well,
mm,
that takes a lot of laborious admin tasks out of the way. You
mm,
find yourself, you've got a lot of free time.
mm.
And if you're not kind of with family or traveling, there's a lot of time that can be utilized to monetize really, and it will benefit me in some shape or form in maybe like a month or 6 months time. So
Nice. So you spoke about going to do some bigger deals. What do bigger deals look like for you? What things are you
um
looking at in the pipeline?
so my biggest deal now
Mm,
is it's a 44 bed HMO. It's
mhm,
a block of 14 apartments. We've got 12 free beds and two penthouse 4 beds at the
mhm,
top. It's a 5 minute walk to the Derby University.
mhm.
So I was inspired by you might know like Anti Laville, like
Yeah,
big deals
yeah, no,
only.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think the idea is we'll have like a phase one, which is a land in front, and then the medical practice is still there. And
Mhm,
eventually I'll have to move because you can have like this 4.5 story building in front of this medical practice. And I've built a good rapport with the vendor now. He said, well, he's like 70 years old now. I said, look, Sean, you'll be the first person to call dibs
mhm,
if you want this site. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. Like phase two, you could build like a student accommodation kind of co-living area as
mhm.
well. So the dream's there really to focus on phase one, and then hopefully phase two will come up. If not, we've got other deals in the pipeline that will.
So where are you with that deal at the moment?
So I completed on it, fully investor funded mid March.
Mhm,
I got the planning literally about 3 weeks ago. And to be fair, the planning was already accepted before as 14 apartments. But
mhm,
my business partner, he actually found a way to carve it up into more units to
mhm.
maximize the GEV. So it's because of that it's turned into a beast of a deal, which it can be over 100 units if you did develop the other side next to it.
Mhm.
But hopefully we're going to get to ground probably around July time.
Because so you bought with planning for 14 units,
Originally, I had 14 apartments, 14
apartments.
two-bed
Yeah.
apartments, but they've been carved into like small apartments with more rooms, so then you can
Okay.
maximize the amount of GDV out of it.
Okay. So they're still going to be in terms of title separate apartments, or they're
Yep,
going to be as okay. So
yep.
yes, it's not just one large
No,
co-living space for now. Okay,
no,
fair
no,
enough.
no, no. So literally just basically it's a mini student accommodation block is how I see it,
Mm-hmm.
being so close to the uni. And the great thing about Derby Uni is they're building another campus as well, so they're growing as a city as well as the university as well. And it's kind of like not that far up the tables, which is
Mm-hmm.
good because if you see like BCU, which is where I studied, back in the day they were like in the middle of nowhere, but now they're actually in the city.
Yeah.
So I see kind of the growth in that sense where there's more deals to be done in Derby surrounding students or the hospital or just general employment in the area.
Mhm. Nice. Well, that sounds exciting. Definitely have to try and get down to come and have a look at that once you get
No,
into your
absolutely.
construction phase. Um, what would you say is like in terms of the property space? What's been your most difficult deal to date?
I've got this hotel deal,
Mm,
which we went in. all blazing, all guns blazing. Like, I'm gonna get like 70 odd flats out of this.
Hmm.
And my business partner Sam, he was all on social media about it. I actually stayed away from social media from it. It's probably the best decision because it didn't go as planned.
Okay.
Um, and basically we had like rejections. Um, it went to planning committee, which
Hmm.
got rejected, and we had to go through appeal. So we did finally get 42 apartments in that on that site, but because of the holding costs and everything, it just killed the deal.
Yeah.
Since then,
How long did the whole from
so we'd
acquisition
bought
to?
it April 21,
Mhm.
and well, we're in 24 now, aren't we? So
Mm.
it was only recently, around mid March, was when we sold it to the guy that owns two doors down, who's
Mhm.
got also planning for 32 apartments. Um, it's still up in the air because we've got some deferred consideration agreements that we need to like nail out. But
Mhm.
I was actually on the phone with the guy that bought it, and we're just trying to come up with a plan because a we don't want to lose out because deferred consideration is basically still money owed to us.
Mhm.
So it's trying to control the situation and just find the best outcome. And I think the only way around that is I've got an investor who's just exited a business and he's got funds available. And if he can self fund it, then that wipes out a massive margin, which is the finance holding
Mhm.
costs. And it still stacks for him because he's going to hold it and doesn't need to refinance it. So yeah, I think that's been the most stressful. And in Feb time, we were told by Roma Finance, they're like, "Oh, we're going to call the receivers in," and I was
Mm.
like, "What?" It's like you told us end of Feb, and we've been communicating with them.
Mm.
I said, "Look, end of it was between the Christmas New Year break."
Yeah.
I even went on site to meet the buyer, and I said, "Look, we're negotiating the sale." Got him to get in touch with them. And we found out, well, I overlooked it. He actually emailed Rome and said, "Oh, we're gonna develop our site first, and then 18 months later we'll develop your site." So obviously, as a lender, you're gonna be like, well, "We don't want to fund this then."
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been many kind of like with me and my business partner, so we've not seen eye to eye on certain things, but I think that's been the most difficult deal to date. From that all-time high of like
Yeah.
feeling you can take over the world, and then you see
I
crush
think
down.
I think you just mentioned obviously like the little details or little intricacies, and so I know you said you do a lot with that, the broker paperwork, but I think people underestimate like on Instagram it's loads of new key, new development, new this, but outside of that, it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's a lot of paperwork. It's like for every deal that you agree, you're getting sent out your contracts, your loan agreements, your this, your that, their standard terms, all these things that, and you really do need to, as much as you can have good relationships with lenders, you need to understand what you're exposing yourself to on each individual case.
mm, no, 100%. And the amount of like PGs you have to sign,
Yes,
has to be independently witnessed now.
yeah,
Before you could do it on like FaceTime,
yeah,
but now you've got to have a witness, next to your solicitor being a witness,
yeah,
even
which
if you want to do
is,
it on FaceTime.
and it's, yeah, trying to, obviously, if your solicitor can't do it, or that certain they say it can't be somebody else from the firm, it has to be a separate solicitor if you're going to get like independent legal advice
Yeah,
and all of these things. It's just, yeah, just extra boxes to tick, extra
it
hoops to
is.
jump through.
And very recently we've hit that like higher credit in
Mm,
Shawbrook as well. So they're like, oh, they literally have a genuine conversation on the phone. It's
mm,
like, so you understand the risk that you're taking, like,
yeah,
you're borrowing X amount. What's your plan for the next 10, 20 years? And I was just honest. I was honest with him. I said, oh, this is what we've got planned. And then he was like, how are you going to manage your units? I was like, oh, well, we've got our own management team in the area now. So we manage it. Um,
mm,
with our own eyes, and rather than kind of rely on an agent and just kind of give up on it,
mhm,
we do see everything that goes in and out because the cleaners are there every 2 weeks.
yeah,
So it's like, all right, okay. So he saw the business sense in it, and it's not just like the rare. Picked up my keys and now it's rented. Here's passive income. It's not
yeah,
passive whatsoever. It
yeah.
can be to an element, but you still gotta steer the ship and
Mhm.
just be the conductor of the orchestra. I think that's
Do you think that the level that you've grown at has helped you build relationships with lenders specifically?
I think so. Do you mean by lenders as in like the mortgage lenders or
Yeah,
the?
like so, like your Shawbrooks of this world. Do you think because of the volume of deals that you're doing that you have
I
a
think I'm
degree more
still a
flexible?
small number
Mm,
on their book,
mm,
but being able to deal with one person now, he obviously understands what I'm doing. I'm not having to like literally screaming on the phone to like random people on the phone, and I don't get like those scary emails of like, oh, can we just check on what you're doing the next few months? So it's good to work with someone, and I think that's less time being wasted, kind of just kind of repeating yourself and duplicating stuff. So no, it definitely does get easier to an extent, but it means your focus is elsewhere, and that's where the difficulty probably goes into instead.
So what's been your favorite deal to date?
My favorite deal. My favorite deal is the deal I'm in right now, which is it's my office.
Okay.
I agreed it by seeing like a cardboard sign with a phone number on it. I was literally just picking a takeaway from across the road.
So this is the takeaway going full circle.
Yeah. I don't say full circle. That's it. So I rang it, and then she picked up and she's like, "Yeah, I'm selling with the agent." And then we agreed at a time 550 grand. I needed to move my accountancy office anyways, and to be fair, we had some change of plans. We were thinking like a bubble tea shop, we were thinking like a bridal shop, and then it's like, you know what, I need to move my accounts team because we're growing and we need more desk space. So we signed a lease for downstairs, and then she wanted more money. She wanted 600 grand, and we'd already spent like 50 just doing the office up. I was like, I can't commit to it. It's not worth 600. And then about 6 months later, she put it on the auction without telling me. It was a bit sour. And I just messaged out of courtesy. So look, I'm going to register the auction, just to let you know. And then I won it. I was actually in a hot tub in David Lloyd whilst I was doing the bidding.
It's good
But I
stuff.
won it for 500. So she actually got less than what she wanted, and we originally agreed. And then it got a bit annoying because the value went on holiday. We're in an auction deadline. Value went on holiday, so that got delayed by a week. And then when the value tried to get through to her to get access, she wouldn't pick up. So you know, auctions are like what,
Yeah.
30 days, isn't it? So we did go over by like a week and a bit, and I still hadn't raised the funds like 2 weeks before. And we completed, and I did find the investor who I think gave me like 250 grand at a time, which was enough to cover the in between the deposits and
Yeah.
stuff. And in short, complete on my son's first birthday.
No.
So I always remember that day. We've turned the downstairs has remained as commercial, but we've upped the rent slightly. And then the upstairs, we managed to get there's 3 flats. So there's a 4-bed ensuite HMO, 3-bed ensuite HMO, and a 1-bed flat now.
Okay, nice.
So it was worth actually at the time 564 when we did the valuation. The uplift should be about 1.25 to 1.3 million. And so there's a good, probably say about 450 grand profit there.
Oh wow, a nice deal.
But yeah, that I'll probably say that's my best deal today. Purely because I'm in it, I'm enjoying it. I see it every day because I go to the office every now and then.
Numbers are good.
I think when it's all kind of done and dusted, you can visualize like that drone shot of that. It's a massive corner plot with like the car park at the back.
Yeah.
So, and obviously it's my office, 2 salons, and then the HMOs above.
Nice. Nice to have a HQ. Nice to have your own base there.
Yeah.
Which obviously you've also developed and added value to, which is great. How have you found auctions recently?
I've not actually bought it from the auction for probably about since September. That was my last auction one. Yeah, and I'm finding a lot of stuff is coming up now. Maybe people are panic selling. I've seen a lot of stuff that people bought during COVID that's gone back up for sale.
Yeah.
Maybe they found out it's not for them, and fortunately they're actually selling it for what they paid for or a little bit more as well.
I think during COVID, obviously with a lot of bounce back loans and just a lot of money floating around, people that weren't particularly in property with prices going up were just saying, well, we're looking at it as they can't really lose. Then over time I've seen them don't necessarily have the appetite for it.
Yeah. And I think that's my realization. Is like, I don't want to be like them. I need to see this as a business that's going to last for like 30 years, which is my mortgage or more, and don't repeat the mistakes that they're probably making, which is probably just not viewing it for one, and not having a plan in mind. They probably thought, I'll just buy it, hold on to it, and it'll go up in value. But for us, it's always adding value. What can we turn this beast into to get the money out? Because it's not just my money that I'm playing with; it's other people's money. So it has to add. We have to add value.
Yeah, I definitely think it's obviously a much tougher market in terms of the volume of sales, interest rates, than it has been over previous years. But I think also with that, the upside is that you have to actually be able to, as you mentioned, add that value day one and have a strategy as opposed to just letting the market pull you along,
Mm.
which I think has kind of separated those that are doing it as a hobby versus those that are doing it as a business.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
In all of your, you said 120,000 you think you spent on personal development,
Probably about that.
give or take,
Give
maybe
or
a little
take,
bit more.
yeah.
Where do you think you got your most value for money?
Most value for money. I was part of this group called Real Life,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a lot more kind of mindset, personal development, and
Mm-hmm.
coaching that came with it, and it's given me the tools which I still relate to today. I'm still being coached today by another coach, and those principles and foundations still lie. Um, so I think that's been a pinnacle moment. And although there might be other courses out there that do the same thing, but it's what I did and the journey that I went on, and
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. Whatever they're doing now is what they're doing now. It's what I took out from it and just kind of elaborated from is
Yeah.
how I saw it.
I think that's it with because education as a whole is probably like an area that has a lot of debate over it in terms
Mm,
of value for money, in terms of its validity. And a lot of people have different opinions. I think myself personally, I'm much more of like an active learner. So
mm.
it's like I just have to do. Like if I sit down and read something or I'm kind of learn from someone, I just have to go out there and sort of do. But I think it's really about making sure that you find something that works for you, right? And that resonates with you and that you can then go and implement.
No, definitely. I think I'm more of an active learner as
Mm,
well. So even though I'm sat in the seminar, I'm probably only digesting about 10% of it
mm,
because I just can't sit there and write all day.
yeah.
But when you take away what you need from that 10% and actually go on sites and speak to other investors and network, and well, I found that's how I've learned quicker.
Hmm.
And by applying it, it's not just sitting there and read books for a living. And the more you do, practice makes permanent. That's one of the key
Hmm.
sayings. It's not perfect, but it makes it permanent in your head because then it just becomes unconscious. Like
Hmm.
subconscious kind of kicks in, and you're like, oh, and how to do that, how to go from like GDV back to like
Yeah.
square one.
It's like one of those things. I don't know if you remember like how sort of scary your first driving lessons were.
Yeah.
Like when you first get into that car, and like you see a lot of people
I
now
remember,
don't even bother with the
I remember
manuals.
my
But
foot was
obviously,
like
yeah, you're
shaking
like,
on
Liz,
the
that
clutch.
you would not believe it. My friend Kamal told me this story the other day. He said you don't know pressure until like he said his foot was like this. He said the instructor couldn't believe the way his foot was shaking. But the reason I say it is when you first get into that car, you're thinking about everything that you're doing, every check, every. Now, sometimes you're driving and you don't even realize how you sort of got this far. Like you're doing it on such autopilot. And I think that's skill sets that can become very similar in business.
Well, like I draw an automatic, and
Yeah.
like when I jump into like a manual car, you don't think you're like, oh, just put in a gear, and it
Yeah.
just becomes part of your subconscious.
Hmm.
But no, it applies in everything, and how you do anything is how you do everything,
Hmm.
and you just gotta just keep going and have a break as well,
Hmm.
because it's not just always about kind of work, but just
What do you enjoy? Like, what are your outside of property, outside of family? Like for you, what's you don't gamble anymore?
no,
No,
don't
so
gamble
no,
anymore.
don't
I
gamble.
love to travel.
Hmm.
And me and Joey, my wife, we set ourselves a goal where we want to be able to travel with kids anywhere, anytime, any place.
Hmm.
And I say we, that's the goal that I set, but I've indoctrinated it now.
into the family.
So like we went to like Japan for like
Mm,
3 weeks in January, and then I was like, it's just a bliss
mm,
because it's just seeing another world to Derby.
mm,
And we love to eat as well. We're massive foodies. Like we love
mm,
our street food and stuff.
mhm,
Like you
mhm.
went to Thailand.
Yeah,
We love Thailand as well, where
nice, right.
it's just a different environment, and that's what we live for. I think
Hmm.
you can think back to all your previous like holidays and trips and business trips, and you you forget about it, and then you have to relive it again
Yeah.
to just take another perspective on it.
I think that's important for anyone that is starting out or anyone that's in their entrepreneurial journey. That a lot of people focus on, I want to get to 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, a billion, but in that process, you can get lost in it just being numbers, and you have to find things that you enjoy and that motivate you outside of the monetary value to keep you going as well. Particularly when sometimes the money's not coming in the way you want it, or sometimes it's coming in amazingly, but you've got nothing to spend it on. It doesn't give you that same level of motivation. So I think it's always important to find stuff that you enjoy that you can?
I think on reflection, when I first started writing my goals, I wasn't married yet, so it was like a year from now we're gonna be married. It was during COVID as well, so we had like 30 people at our wedding. And then like 5 years later, like my son will be like 2, my daughter's gonna be like 4. That age gap became 1 year and 6 months, so that went a bit earlier than planned. But like it is always attaching that experience and how does it feel and what does it look like, where are we gonna be? That's what paints the picture. The money is secondary, I think. Obviously, it makes it easier, but like it's being able to just say, "Oh," I say to my investors, like, "Oh, I'm going to pay you like 10 grand in interest. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
What holiday are you going to go on?" And they forget about the money. It's more about the experience.
Yeah.
And
No, definitely. I'm a big, if you know me, we often have to cancel the odd podcast because I'll be traveling. I think I'm going to Albania at the end of the month, and I like to try and just see as many different places as possible. But I think as a final thought from you, as like for someone who's for a lot of people, they'd look at and they say you've done it, made it. Obviously, you still got massive goals that you're heading towards. But what piece of advice would you give to somebody who's maybe starting out there where you were 2015, 16, 17? What advice would you have for them?
I'd probably say, obviously, invest in yourself, and it's up to you how comfortable of how much you want to invest in yourself, because it doesn't have to be like that 25 grand one go. That for me is like a right, I've got to make something of it because I've spent that money already.
Yeah.
Whereas you could buy like a £1 or £10 course and you wouldn't think of it. It just becomes like that gym subscription that you don't go to.
Yeah.
So find that level of comfort of what you want to invest in yourself. It might be 2-3 grand. And then if you can find someone that's in the space that you want to be at, find that mentor, because the mentoring and the coaching is what kept me accountable. So it wasn't like me going off track and then not knowing where to go. A lot of people can say, "Oh yeah, you've got all the networks for that," but then if you invest in yourself in the coaching mentoring, it's more specific and it is set. Like I get coached every week, so then like I know at the end of the week I've got to give results, and if I don't give results, it's acknowledging what went wrong and what can I do better than next week. Um, and I think if you're first starting out, obviously reading the books like your Rich Dad Poor Dad gives you the foundation. But I think 12-week year has certainly played a part because it's how I structure my whole year. Like you've got your 4 years in 1 year, and just do everything in blocks of 12. Is much more manageable rather than trying to say like, oh, my New Year's resolution is this, and don't get it by the 1st of February.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you think first starting out, just scope out who do you want to work with, because not every mentor's for you, not every coach is for you, and then the more you kind of get a feel of everything, don't analyze too much and get paralyzed with it. Just make a decision, put a date, like by end of this month I'm going to find myself a coach, and then you will keep yourself accountable.
It's good. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Sounds like you've got a lot of exciting stuff coming. I'm sure we're going to try and make sure that we can get ourselves down to one of these projects to get you included in the development tour section. For those that haven't already, how can people connect with you or find you?
I'm most of the time I'm on Facebook and Instagram. It's Sean C Property. So if you want to just drop me a message or just follow. I'm trying to get better at my Instagram and like share more stories and posts of what we're doing. And I did have a YouTube channel, which hopefully we're gonna
Bring back.
Yeah, which is also Sean C Property, and just share with everyone what we're doing.
Amazing. Well, we're going to make sure we put all of the links in the description. As always, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like this video. If you've got any questions, Sean's going to commit to coming back to YouTube so he can maybe pop into the comment section and answer some of your questions. We are going to be back next week with another amazing guest. So make sure we see you there next week.